Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Get Candid. My name is Kim Greco, and I have a very special guest with me today. Ray is an award-winning director, choreographer, artistic director, and producer. He is very well known for his visually stunning and live performances. Ray is highly sought after for his visionary artistry. With over 20 years of experience across Europe, North America, and Central America. His name is Ray Hogg. Hello, Ray. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. Ray founded the Prime Mover Theater Company in June 2020, which we're going to talk about today. And believe it or not, he's born in Toronto, raised in Montreal, began his dance career at the age of 17, and started in a church basement. How about we start with that?
Yeah, it's so funny though. When you go back to your roots, I feel like it's often that kind of case where you start in a very humble beginnings in essentially community classes. So
yes,
as you mentioned, I grew up in Montreal, but I was one of those children that picked up and dropped activities like crazy. So when I was actually 5, I asked my parents if I could start dancing, and they said no, because by then I think they already had activity fatigue, right? They were like, oh my god,
activity fatigue.
play the clarinet. He wants to play the piano. He wants to take up bungee, whatever.
Yeah.
If it existed, I was like, I want to try, and then I would try and drop it right away. So they were like, nah, we're just gonna like pause in the dancing. So fast forward, we moved. Yeah. We lived in Montreal, and I was very active in theater. I went to a school in Montreal called St. George's School of Montreal, and it had a very high caliber theater program. We took ourselves so seriously. We did not do musicals in our program. We only did non-musical plays, and we did very challenging material like Lady Windermere's Stand by Oscar Wilde, or Timberlake Wharton Baker's Our Country's Good. Like, these are really difficult plays that high schoolers should probably not be doing. And in your graduating year, the school would go on a tour. So like my very first tour, I guess I was 17 as the same year I started dancing. I was 17 and we toured New England with this play, The Beau Stratagem. Again, a play that like high school, like a classic theater piece that high schoolers have no business doing. Anyway, so we, or I shouldn't say that. It's not your typical high school.
No, I get, yeah, absolutely. Right.
There.
Yeah,
it's very,
yeah.
very serious. So one day before rehearsing for The Beau Stratagem, I was warming up with my friend Christoph, and I sort of said to him, I've always wanted to dance. And he says, I know a ballet teacher, we should go. And I said, okay, let's do it. So we went off to, her name was Ora Kozlov, and she trained and danced in Israel, and at some point moved to Canada and started this ballet studio in a church basement in Westmount, Quebec. So there we were, Christoph and I, 17, in class with all 12-year-olds, all 12-year-old girls, and then us two 17-year-old boys.
Oh my God.
It was hilarious because, they were all like this tall, and there we were that tall, so it's one funny. But then Ora also, bless her, she really instilled the discipline right away and right from the beginning, and she insisted that we wear tights, dance belts, the whole kit.
Good.
So it added to a little bit of the like, gosh, I was in this room with sort of small people, and I've never in my life been asked to wear this kind of clothing.
Right.
But it's like we understood right from the start that when you're dancing, there is discipline. There is a wardrobe that is specific and necessary in order to train in the discipline properly and appropriately. So it's like it gave me this incredible immediate respect for the art form and all of the structure that surrounds it. So that was the beginning, was with Ora.
Wow,
in the
incredible. She really set you up. She set you up for success, though, that's for sure. Yeah.
She did.
Yeah. How long did you study with her?
Oh, I probably studied with, so soon after I wound up to like continue my sort of training journey, I wound up then coming back to Toronto, and I went to Ryerson University in their dance performance program. So I guess that was 2 years later. So I was with Ora for 2 years, and in that time, I studied acting at the Dome Theater program at Dawson College, and it became immediately apparent to me that I could go back when I was 40. I said, oh, when I'm 40, I'll go back and I'll do actor training. but that I couldn't do dancer training later in life. And so my dedication to the art form, you know, I lived, breathed, ate,
Yes.
everything was dance for me. And I realized that I really needed to actually pursue it immediately, because your body won't necessarily last forever, right? In terms of being able to do the highly physical stuff. So in the intervening years, a friend of mine, who her name is Lisa Rubin, and she is now the artistic director of the Seagull Center in Montreal, a very impressive theater. She introduced me to Don Jordan and Phil Cole, who are these incredible jazz teachers in Montreal. Phil Cole was a dancer with Les Ballet Jazz. So he sadly passed away not too long ago, but he was the two of them were incredible mentors for me. You know, I'd never really seen at first, I didn't really know dance that well when I was 17. I just knew it was something I wanted to do. But whenever something was on TV, like if the Nutcracker was on TV or any kind of show, my parents would take us to a lot of opera and a lot of non-musical theater and musical theater. So I grew up very immersed in the arts. My uncle's a very well-known musician. He's played with very, very famous people out there. And so, you know, music and art and going out and consuming concerts and things was part of our lives. But dance just wasn't it wasn't something that we did. So I didn't really know a lot of dance, but I knew enough to know that it was remarkable to see two black men, which Don Jordan and Phil Cole, both black men, to see two black men. So having that representation in the dance studio for me, opened up this world of possibility, right? And Donnie, if there are maybe some teachers listening, might remember a show from way back in the day called Like Young. It was a CBC, it was like the CBC's answer to American Bandstand. So they'd have these beautiful young dancers sort of, you know, doing the jerk and go-go dancing on bosses to the music of the day.
Amazing.
And that was on the CBC. So Donnie was like a young dancer, and he holds this incredible position in the Montreal performing arts community. He's really, at this point, he's, you know, a senior artist who many of us look up to and respect as someone who gave and continues to give, because he's still active as a teacher, this foundation of professionalism. So it's like when I think back to my training, I realized that with Aura, she began with these are the clothes you wear, right? She also said we were teenage boys. So she also said you must always have a toothbrush and toothpaste and deodorant in your dance bag.
Oh, really?
Isn't that smart? She must have had some smelly partners her day. She was like, I don't want you boys to smell bad. And I thought, and so we would have to brush our teeth before class and, you know, reapply deodorant.
I would have thought about the toothbrush, but yeah, that's fantastic.
Right? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, when you think about partnering, my goodness, sometimes you are in very close proximity to your partner, right? So
I love it.
Again, right from as I was learning the foundation of technique, I was learning the foundation of a professional life in the arts, right? Be considerate of the people you're working with. And with Donnie and Philip, the same thing. It was all about how to dance technically. This is what a contraction is. This is how to work parallel. This is how to work turned out. But it was also how to comport yourself, right? How to behave in a professional setting. How to get along with people that you might not outside of the rehearsal room get along with. How do you find consensus?
Good point.
Conciliatory? So all of this I was learning at the same time as I was learning how to do Candid. It was I was so fortunate, right? It feels like a real blessing. I'm grateful for that. So anyway, Lisa introduced me to Donnie and Phil. I danced with them for 2 years, and then I wound up deciding that I was going to leave the Dome Theater program and pursue dance full time. So I auditioned for the Ailey program in New York City, the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, the School of Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, and I auditioned for York University, and I auditioned for Ryerson. So I was my eggs were in 3 baskets, and then. Blessing and a curse, I was very fortunate to have been accepted to all 3 programs. Ailey, I auditioned for them twice. They sent me back to Canada. They were like, you're not quite ready. Go train more and come back in 6 months. So I think I did something crazy, 24 classes per week. I basically did a full-time, I did my own full-time program. So the studios that Donnie and Phil were teaching out of were a place called Ballet Divertimento, and they still exist. And so there was enough classes that I could go, basically 7 hours a day of dance. And I would start in the morning with the morning class, where very many of the professional ballet dancers from Les Grands Ballets Canadiens in Montreal, so they would come and take company class there. So again, I was exposed to how professional dancers approach their technique. And it was jaw-droppingly beautiful and so inspiring to see, you know, these ballet dancers, ballerinas that I admired so much. You know, they would come to class, and it was as if they were doing a full, the rond de jambe exercise looked like a full performance. Like you felt like they were on the Grand Place des Arts, the theater, the concert hall in Montreal. It was as if they were on the concert hall stage, but in, you know, the grimy studio. It was I was so fortunate to see that firsthand. And I was terrible, you know, trying to figure out how to do things. I just had no clue. While I had a certain amount of facility naturally, I really had to work at technique. So my right leg had like 180-degree turnout, and my left leg had like 3-degree turnout. So this was me standing in a turned out first position. Over time, I've gotten, you know, pretty good, but like this is where I started.
That's tough.
And again, I credit, obviously I did some work on that, but I had such incredible teachers when I started, from Aura, Don, and Phil in Montreal. And then when I eventually settled on I chose Ryerson in the end for a variety of reasons. It was sort of the best fit for me. I loved the faculty there, and I understood that it felt like they understood me and what I needed. So it felt, you know, sometimes, you know, you can be in a class situation and it feels like you're part of this ensemble, this group receiving instruction. Right from the audition at Ryerson, it felt like it was one-on-one. It was Nadia Potts was the program director then and was sort of our head ballet mistress or ballet teacher. And it felt like it was Nadia and Ray right away from the audition, which is not to say that she ignored the rest of the room by any means. I was definitely not the favorite pupil. I was probably one of the most controversial, if anything, because I had a lot of figuring out to do, I think, through university, as many people do. So I was not necessarily an easy student. In part because my class was so extraordinary. Like the talent that I walked into, there was 40 women and me in the first year, 41 of us. Wow. And those 40 women were and continue to be just incredible artists and incredible technicians and incredible human beings. Yes. There are, you know, many have either retired from dancing or moved on, but there's also this core of women from that time who are still very active in dance and in choreography. And I love them and I cherish them. But boy, when we first met, was I ever like the scum on the bottom of a shoe? Because I didn't have the background, right? I had to find the resilience to not crumble in a room full of like, never mind skin color. There were some dancers of color in the room, few, it was a very small group, and they also were incredible. But it was more, you know, there was this culture shock of being in a room with 40 women. I had never been in that situation before, where I was the only boy, right? And boy, did I ever learn about how strong women are. Also, in that, I had a lot of like, just shut up and listen, right? I also learned just how many sort of trials and tribulations girls and women go through growing up that are very different than the kinds of things I experienced. So I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to not only learn from our incredible faculty, Nadia Potts, Karen Duplessis, Maureen Consolati, Audrey Looker, Stelio, I don't know how to say Stelio, his last name, and Vicky St. Denis, who's now the current program director. Like that, those men and women gave such incredible instruction and incredible the wealth of knowledge and the way that they figured out and understood how to transmit that knowledge to us as students. It's like the debt of gratitude that I owe to them is really, I mean, I think I would be an engineer or a banker or a fundraiser or something. I would not be in the arts. But for them having the patience to I think really nurture me and to teach me, as I said, like at that audition, Nadia and Ray one-on-one, and every single teacher, that's how it felt. It felt like, you know, Stelio met me on my terms. It was like, okay, you need this. So even though he was in this incredible group, who I think were also receiving their own individual attention.
Of course, yeah,
It felt so, it's like, and maybe because I didn't dance before, I came to the room with a different kind of energy, which was like, no, I need you to be one-on-one with me.
Fair,
but somehow it all just worked so beautifully. And, you know, within the first year of training, I was actually scouted at a dance class. A choreographer, just one day my phone rang before people had cell phones. My home phone rang and I answered and his voice said, "Hello, this is Rodolfo Rivas Franco. I would like you to come dance for me." And I was like, "What? Who are you? How did you find me?" And he said, "Oh, I saw you. There's a class in Toronto that is now called Good Morning Dancers or Good Morning Movers, and it used to be called the Teachers Collective. It was a contemporary bar dance class that you could take." And so he had seen me in class, and I don't know how, asked around and decided that he wanted to work with me. So I was also learning how to dance, but also learning how to be a professional. So the theme continued through my post-secondary education. I would go, you know, through the fall and winter semesters at Ryerson, and then in the summer and through some, you know, spring, summer, I'd be dancing with Rodolfo's company, which is called the Aleph Company. And again, like, fortunate me, he was a de Rosier dancer. So Robert de Rosier, for those who don't know, Robert de Rosier was once upon a time famous enough that he played himself in a Hollywood movie. That's right, folks. Do you remember? Do you remember there was a Robert Altman film called The Company, and it starred Neve Campbell. So Neve is a Canadian actor who has had great Hollywood success. And she was also in the ballet chorus of the Phantom of the Opera when it was playing in Toronto all those years, for so many years. So she has her roots. She was a National Ballet School trained dancer, and her roots are in dance. And somehow she and Robert Altman cooked up this idea to have this movie called The Company, which is like riveting because, let me tell you, dance company life is so fascinating and so unlike any other kind of life, I would say. So I certainly enjoyed the movie. And I think it's a theme that Hollywood comes back to over and over again over the years, right? So this was that one. Yeah, Robert played himself in the movie. Anyway.
I did not know that.
I know. Rodolfo was a de Rosier dancer, and if you have never heard of I please go look up on YouTube, on the internet, try to find Robert de Rosier and see some of his dances. He was and is, he's still actively creating. He's recently made some dances for Ballet Organ in Toronto, and he's just a real visionary, and his work is fiendishly difficult technically, but also has this incredible fantasy life. So they're really sort of surreal and beautiful pieces. One piece opens with the lights come up as a pin spotlight, and you're like, you kind of go, what am I looking at? And you realize you're looking at a cow spinning through space. So there's a clown in the sort of classic Pierrot makeup with a vest and pinstripe and an accordion, spinning in a circle, and attached to him is a life-size cow. I mean, and that's the beginning of the dance. It's crazy.
And then it goes from there.
And then it goes from there, and then it becomes this incredible other thing. But like, I mean, what a mind! Like, who would ever think of that, right? So,
yes.
The answer is Robert de Rosier. So he makes amazing dances, and that kind of brought me into contact with the professional contemporary dance community in Toronto. So by the time I finished Ryerson, when I left Ryerson, I worked for a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 months with some independent choreographers, and then wound up as an apprentice at the Danny Grossman Dance Company, which again is one of Canada's, along with de Rosier and Winnipeg Contemporary Dancers in Winnipeg, and Judith Marquis' company in Vancouver, and there's a handful of these sort of, they're like the founding parents of contemporary dance in Canada. So Danny is one of those in Toronto. And so I had, again, the great fortune of being apprenticed there, and then eventually becoming a soloist there. So I sort of worked my way up the ranks there. And that was really, really hard.
Was it? What made it difficult?
I think the most difficult thing about company life is that you are constantly in competition with your closest friends.
Yes.
Right. You become family. It's like you you have this common experience of overcome. Like, I think it's, you know, if you're a younger person, you're dancing in your local studio, right?
Yes.
There's something, your dance friendships are so tight and so close because you are working together to achieve something together, right? If you're preparing for competition or recital, you're working together to make that piece the best. If you're dealing with a teacher who is very demanding and very strict, you're getting through that together. It's like you're digging deep as a team to find resilience, right? And strength and the power and the ability to overcome obstacles. Well, that's true in a dance company as well, except the one difference is you're being paid to do this, right? So this becomes your job. And you need this job to pay your rent, your mortgage, your car payments, your internet bill, right? You need this income. Your dance friends become your dance family, and they become your biggest competition. Because when an outside choreographer comes into the company to say, okay, I'm going to set a new piece, it's fair game for everybody.
It is.
Most dance companies, or many, I should say many dance companies still have a fairly hierarchical structure where there are principal dancers, a bunch of soloists, and then a core and ensemble. And when a guest comes in, often it's fair game. Anybody can get that role. Your rank doesn't matter anymore. And it just winds up being a space where you are competing. You're competing for the same stuff. And so someone is going to be let down with every casting notice that goes up. And boy, I think that managing those relationships and keeping them positive and staying close, that bond, I think that was really difficult. The repertoire was really difficult. I mean, your entire day is dancing. So you start with class in the morning, and then you rehearse, and sometimes you'd have performance in the evening. It's that classic sort of dance company structure. And so there were times where you could be dancing for like 10 hours a day.
It's incredible. It really is.
And you know, sometimes I look back and I'm like, I should have eaten more. You know, I was like, I should have been having everything I could get my hands to eat. And you know, I look back at it and think, wow, coffee is not breakfast.
No.
This is something I have discovered that, you know, eggs are breakfast.
That's
Fruit
right.
salad.
That's funny you should say that.
But coffee is not breakfast. And so, and I don't know, I guess again, there's that resilience where you're pushing the limits of your body.
Oh, yes.
And also kind of pushing the limits of your body, pushing the limits of your relationship, which puts you under a lot of mental strain that you have to develop the inner strength and toughness to dig deeper. And to persevere. So it was incredibly valuable learning experience for me to spend. I think I was with the company for 5 years. 5 years. And in those 5 years, I also, again, like there's so much, obviously there's like a little bit, there's hard work on my part and there was some talent, but there was also an enormous amount of luck. So I was very lucky that there was another company called Corpus Dance Project, and Corpus worked in the spring and summer, and the Daniel Grossman Dance Company worked in the fall and winter. And so I became a full-time dancer at both companies, and I was one of the very few people at that time in the late 90s and early 2000s in Toronto to be working 12 months of the year as a professional dancer.
That's fantastic. That's unheard of, really. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. And at that moment, that time, I was a concert dancer with contemporary dance companies, which means, you know, not a lot of money for starters. In terms of the way that the funding works, a lot of those mid-sized companies didn't have a lot of money, which meant that they couldn't work 12 months of the year, even though there was desire to. They didn't have the resources to operate fully year round. So even if you were talented and were a company member, there was a good chance you were not working full time, a full 52 weeks with them, right?
Yes, right.
So, so that was really, really a great time. And then even though I was really focused on contemporary dance and concert dance, I never lost my love of jazz and music theater, which was like a very, very early love. I remember I was in grade 2 and I got called in Montreal, and I got called to the principal's office. My parents got telephoned because I was skipping down the halls, belting at the top of my lungs, "That summer come out," Annie in the halls.
Wait a minute. What grade? Grade 2?
grade 2, yeah.
Grade
But
2.
like at the top of my lungs. And so the school thought that wasn't appropriate, and my parents were called to discipline
And that's
me
where
because,
that's where they were called in. Oh my goodness.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have always really loved music and song and expressing in that way. So
Love that.
and I say also the first musical that I ever saw was Cats musical when
Okay.
I was 9 years old.
Mhm.
Shortly after the Annie incident. So at 9 years old, and I saw Cats musical, and it marked me forever. It was such a the spectacle of it. You know, you walk in the theater, and we had been at that point to the theater several times, and we all know what a theater looks like. There's red velvet seats, and there's a red curtain, and you know, it's all very prim and proper. And we walked in, and it was this junkyard, right? And it was life size. It was all the junk was blown up to the size of me. So if it was this bottle, it wasn't this size. It was like the perspective of a cat, right? It was human sized, right? And the set came right out into the audience, so it felt like even in your seat, you felt like you were in the junkyard. And then the overture starts, and the cats come out, and their eyes are blinking and they're green, and they're like right in your lap. When I think back to it, you know, Belio, who's one of my really important teachers of arts, and was in that Canadian company of cats, and so he and many other people who are now my close friends of mine were in that first musical that I saw.
Incredible.
And scared the stuffing out of me, because you're not, when you're like, you know, you have no idea what to expect, and suddenly there's a life-size cat in this fantastic kind of kabuki-esque makeup right in your face, blinking their green eyes. So it continues like that. So I say Cats was the original immersive theater. Immersive theater is very popular right now, where you know, audience comes in and they're either in a promenade style walking around the environment, or the environment is completely 360 and encompasses all of them. So, and it's incredible. But you know, I had that experience at 9 years old at the Cat show. So so I saw Cats, and then fast forwarding again. Cats in Germany. So Germany has this incredible music theater hunger. The people of the country love musicals, and no surprise, Cats was one of the first ones that was performed there. There's even in Germany a purpose-built arena for the musical Starlight Express, the one on roller skates.
Really?
They built a special building with ramps and half bowls and all these things. Like, that's how much people in Germany, Germany is smaller than Ontario.
Yes.
They love musicals so much that there's a purpose-built arena for Starlight Express, which is, I don't think, produced anywhere else in the world, right? So at the time, they had a Cats production, and they would go every year, because it started running in '86 or so, and I believe is still running today. It's been this incredible continuous run in Germany. And they would go around the entire world. They would go to Russia, they would go to Australia, Singapore, Spain, Italy, London, New York, LA, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. So you would go to these auditions. They were epic, huge. And they do this tour, and you know, there'd be 100, 200, 300 people trying to book this job. And somehow, little old me, I booked the role of McCavity.
Amazing.
In the German production of Cats. So I moved to Germany, and I performed for a year there as the bad guy in the Cat show. So it's a lovely full circle moment. I got to have this childhood dream. I should say, there's one thing I forgot in that story. With my friend Christoph and Aura Kozlov in the church basement.
Right.
About 6 months or so after we started training with Aura. I mean, ballet is hard. We all know that.
Yeah.
And I was, and it was hard physically, but it was also like it kind of wore on me, being 17 and in the room with 12 girls. Like, there was something just so humiliating about that. In hindsight, it wasn't, but at the moment, I was also still a teenager. It's just I didn't feel comfortable.
Right.
And I asked my drama teacher at St. George's, Matt Meyer, who happened to be married to a ballerina from Les Camps Ballet. I said, look, I really want to do Cats the musical one day. What should I be focused on right now? Should I be focused on, because I was hoping he'd say, oh, quit dancing. So I was like, should I focus on acting? Should I focus on singing? Or should I focus on dance? And without missing a beat, he looked at me and he said, ballet. You need to keep going with the ballet. Yeah. He knew at this point that I had started ballet. He just said, ballet. You need to keep going. It's like he, again, like how a great teacher can set you up for your future, right?
Absolutely.
He was dead right. There's no way I would have survived the Cat Show if I hadn't received what, in my opinion, the finest ballet training at Ryerson University.
Yeah.
The team of teachers in my day there was so extraordinary. They took such good care of us. They balanced anatomical function with ballet techniques. So we learned both simultaneously how to take this turn out and turn it into this without blowing my knees out.
Exactly.
They really instilled this work ethic in us that you have go to class every day, and when you are working, you have to be completely present and completely focused on the work you are doing, not only for self-preservation, but for self-preservation and maintenance, but also for longevity, and also for to find freedom, so you can actually find freedom of expression, grounded in being able to no longer actively think about technique. You sort of do the meditative practice every day where you're actively thinking about technique, and then when it comes time to perform, that foundation becomes second nature. It's built into you, it's instilled in you, and then you can actually really sort of flip into an expressive mode.
Yeah.
Now, if we go back to my good fortune of always training alongside professionals, I had seen this with my own eyes. The combination of the being able to leave technique, or I should say marry technique with performance, so that you continue gathering up the technical expertise, and you continue flipping that into letting the technique inform the way you express yourself.
Very well put. Yeah. So true. So true. Yeah.
I have just been so my dance life was very fortunate. And then I spent a year in Germany, which I should say very many young dancers are aware that there are lots of dance companies in Europe, but I think those who are less inclined towards ballet or contemporary dance, maybe those, when I say contemporary, I mean modern.
Yes.
I'm an old-fashioned guy, I mean modern, not contemporary as we know it today.
Right.
So those who are less inclined to a modern dance company or a ballet company, but are interested in maybe commercial dance, like backup dancing for R&B or hip hop artists, or dancing in a musical, we call that commercial dance. There is a ton of work in Europe.
That's incredible.
Some of your, yeah, right. Like, and it's the kind of thing that I'm keenly aware that some students really want to pursue dance professionally, and others just enjoy it, and that's perfectly valid. And both are really important. I think even just saying my own life story through dance, I realized how much my dance training set me up for my life now, which is really as a director, as a leader, as a director, and as an administrator in my capacity as artistic director. And so much of my work ethic is entirely grounded in the discipline of dance. So it's very valuable, I think, for any kind of future you want. But for those who are interested professionally, not only are there musicals across the European continent, and I should say they're also not they're not like versions of. It's the same Broadway team that goes to all these countries and remounts their Broadway show with the same Broadway production values all over. So when I did Cats, I did the exact Broadway show that you would see. That's the one that we did in Germany. In fact, some Broadway shows, a friend of mine, Tanya, who was in Cats with me, she's a German woman, and she lives in Germany still with her husband and their child. And she has sort of transitioned into becoming a producer. And there was a musical a couple of years back on Broadway, Rocky, the musical. And that one was actually written and produced and workshopped in Germany, in Hamburg. And she was part of the team that worked up. So sometimes you'll see a show on Broadway, but its roots are actually in Europe. So there's this entire world.
Who would have known, right?
Whole world.
Yeah.
So I have a friend, Marissa, who is an incredible dancer who danced a lot in Canada. And she dances both with modern companies and in the commercial dance universe. But she has some connection to Portugal, which I don't actually know what, but she has moved to Portugal part-time. And there's this TV show, Lip Sync Battle, where celebrities they'll challenge their celebrity friends to like a lip sync off, and they have these incredible production values. There's one that blew my mind, which was Zendaya and Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man. He lip synced to Rihanna's Umbrella, and it is astonishing because and he also dressed up as Rihanna, which is hilarious. Amazing. But side note, Tom Holland actually, he's like the latest Spider-Man in the Marvel universe. he played Billy Elliot in Billy Elliot the Musical in the London West End.
I
So
did
he can
not
really
know
dance.
that. Wow.
I know.
Okay.
Like, and it's like dance can take you really far. It can take you to Hollywood stardom. So it's just incredible. And there's, you know, 10, 20 backup dancers just giving her alongside him. So there's a Portuguese version of that. And she is one of the dancers on the Portuguese version. So she spends her time there. She comes back to Canada dancing here. So it's like this, I think for some students watching and listening, if you're really dreaming of a life in dance, but you can't see the pathway, I hope that you take from this time that we're sharing together that there are no limits, really. The only limits you have are self-imposed. Like if you just put on blinders and say, well, you know what, my parents say there's no future in this and I don't know what the future looks like, then that's it. But if you just sort of, you know, peer a little bit further through that ceiling you've imposed, you'll see that all kinds of very fulfilling work in exactly the kind of dance you love to do exists. Yeah. There are ballet companies big and small. There are modern dance companies big and small. There are commercial dance opportunities also big and small. There is room for you in the dance industry. It's really tough. You need a lot of mental strength. You need family support is helpful. that helps a lot. I was very fortunate to have family support and to have had, I mentioned my uncle who makes his living as a musician. So the way was paved a little bit for me, right? The wheel was greased, as they say. Yeah. I was able to say, I want to be an artist, and I didn't have to have that fight of, well, you know, that's not a real career.
Right. Which
if it gives anybody hope, right? Which happens, yeah. And if it gives anyone hope, I have only ever worked in the arts professionally, and you know, I have 2 cars. I have owned 2 houses at the same time. I currently own 1 house, you know, in Toronto. So, you know, you can make a living in the arts. You can have a career. It is not easy, but I don't think anything worth doing is easy.
No, it's true.
You know, and it doesn't matter what your job title is. So again, there's that dance work ethic. It doesn't matter if you're doing a plie or a grand jeté. All of your energy and focus goes to that movement you're trying to execute. And it's the same with work. You that will translate. So it's not easy, but it is way more possible than you might see if that's your interest. It's way more, it is a real thing that you can do.
I love that.
And there is a world of opportunity.
You know what?
A whole world of opportunity.
You know what? You're so right. And there are a lot of students who listen in on these interviews with the artists that I've had the great fortune of interviewing, and I've had some feedback from some of the dance moms. You know, they said, oh, my daughter or my son, you know, watched X, Y, and Z, and now they're, you know, on YouTube looking at, you know, musical theater or Cats or, you know, Stomp, or it just opened their eyes a little bit brighter to possibilities. And I love that because you really can, I think you called it not a vision board, but you called it something about, we had our pre-interview.
Oh, yeah. Like I had this moment in my career where so as I transitioned out of performing, because that's the other, you know, the next chapter of my life is I've retired from dancing and from performing. So I came back from Germany and I wound up working, I was splitting my time about 50-50 between modern dance and musicals. And the musical contracts, there's just more of them, and they kind of edged out modern dance. It wasn't on purpose, it just kind of happened that way. So I became a real music theater specialist, and I worked at the Stratford Festival. And in my first season there was this incredible, I was in South Pacific, and there was this opening image that when the audience was coming into the auditorium, so it wasn't even part of the play, just the brilliant director's name is Michael Lichtenfeld, had this great idea to have a Polynesian person in a dugout canoe in traditional dress blowing in a conch shell. And it makes this really haunting kind of woo sound, and then to have event. And so that was me in the dugout canoe, and with a sound effect, but I looked like I was blowing in a shell. And then eventually, these other 2 Polynesian characters would come on, and they would beat those big, I think they're called taiko drums. I'm saying the name wrong, I'm sure, but those big Japanese drums, right? That they're really huge, and you beat with those two big sticks. And so that was this big drum. You can imagine what those drums are so powerful, right?
Yes.
So the first time we rehearsed that with the instruments was in the rehearsal hall, which is what we call a dance studio in the theater, right? So it was in the rehearsal hall, and the 2 actors who were both just at about 40 years old, but also both incredible physiques, like physique models. They should have been in magazines, posing with, I don't know what, with barbells or something. Like just two of the most incredibly well-sculpted bodies I've ever seen in your life. And they came, so I did my thing where I just sort of stood there and pretended to blow the shell. And then they came out and they started banging on these drums. And in the rehearsal hall, the echo was so huge. We were all like viscerally moved. We were like, oh my goodness, this is so great, amazing. And so the director looked to his associate and said, and they're going to be topless. It's just so excited. Not only is it going to be all this noise, but also these incredible physiques. And I immediately thought to myself, I was like, you know what? My contribution to Canadian theater cannot be my six-pack abs. That's not going to be what I give to theater when I'm 40. I have to give something else.
I like it. Okay.
And so in that moment,
I
kind of birthed this vision statement, right?
A vision
An
statement.
expression of my future self. That's it.
Yes.
Vision statement is, for those who do not work in strategic planning, vision statement is an expression of your future self, what you want to be, what you're aspiring to, your North Star, we call it sometimes. Mm-hmm. And your mission statement is your expression of your present self, the work you're driven to do right now. So mission statement is often very specific, and vision is also specific, but a little bit more broad. So I crafted on the spot, and I didn't know it was not until later that I became an artistic director that I and engaged in active strategic planning that I understood what I had done. But I just somehow had the instinct to say, I'm going to be a major force in Canadian theater. And that was
at that moment, you had that.
At that moment. Yeah. So I was like, I can't just be that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I should say also, both of those two men have gone on. One is the artistic director of a theater company, and the other decided to retire, but he's an incredible advocate and supporter of the arts, and he works now in a company that provides solar water heaters. So he's an environmentalist and a corporate fellow. So, but still a big time supporter of the arts. So, but yeah, I knew that I needed to do something more and something that could serve people. So I grew up in a very community service minded family. My mother was a social worker. She was an attaché at the Security Council to the UN back when Canada had a seat at that table. So I have always grown up with the idea of how can I give to the people around me? How can I bring up people who are struggling to climb whatever ladder they're struggling to climb? How can I shield them and protect them from harm and danger that's around them? So when I say, I birthed this vision statement of being a major force in Canadian theater, it wasn't so that I had bragging rights.
I understand.
It's actually so that I could be of service to my community. Right. Because I have also been, as you've heard from all these wonderful people in my life who, and I only talked about really the dance people, but there's a whole other host of mentors and supporters and artists who came before me who decided for whatever reason that I was worth their time and helped me climb the ladders that I was trying to climb. So I feel driven and I feel compelled to help. Yeah. Which kind of is how my theater company, Prime Mover Theater Company,
yes, let's talk about that.
Born.
Yeah.
So in real fast segue, in the intervening years between now and that moment of Stratford, I quickly transitioned into becoming a choreographer. And then I transitioned into becoming a director. Oops, sorry, just 1 second.
Okay. All good.
That was my alarm for my son's school to start soon. I became a
You're a busy guy.
choreographer. I know, it's like, there's always, I use alarms like crazy to keep me on track.
That's smart.
So I became director choreographer, and then had this wonderful opportunity to become artistic director of Rainbow Stage, which is Canada's largest, longest running outdoor music theater company. 2,300 seats. It's massive. It's huge. The stage is the size of a football field. It's incredible. There's nothing like it in Canada.
By the way, just let me interrupt. Just going to interrupt. Your website is incredible. The work on there it's explosive. It's huge. It's colorful. It moves. It's exciting. I wish I could see some of your pieces live because the website's fantastic. It doesn't do it justice, but your vision of how you put things together and it just gives me chills. I just wanted to say I'm very excited. So I hope everybody visits your website, which is yourname.com. And
Yes.
anyways, they have to go and visit your website for sure before this is over.
That's so
Oh,
yeah,
no,
my
it's
website is
beautiful. Yeah. Anyways, continue.
That's my like personal website, rayhogg.com, RAYHOGG. And then, so Prime Mover Theater Company, we're in this moment of, we're all responding to this public health crisis, and we're at home, and it gives us a lot of opportunity to think. And then the events in the US have really sparked the conversation about what is racism and what is equality, what is equity, what is inclusion, what is diversity. So this is at the forefront of so many of our minds. And the Stratford Festival held a sort of a video roundtable called Black Like Me, which featured performers from many, many years at the festival. And oops, 1 second.
No worries. I can hear you, but you're frozen. But you look
fabulous. Frozen? Oh, okay.
But you look fabulous. So it's good.
Oh, thank you. Good. I'm not frozen like a kind of a funny face.
No, it's all good.
So after watching that broadcast, where many Black actors had the platform and the bravery to share their experiences as Black artists at possibly the pinnacle of Canadian theater, I noticed that the artists who were young, in their 20s, were suffering so much, and that they may not have had first-hand contact with people who are working on their behalf. And so I have been doing this work behind the scenes forever, where very many artistic directors across the country reach out to me for recommendations of either artists or art projects, whether it's a play or a musical or a dance piece, that would be suitable for their season and for their stages. So I've been doing this sort of advocacy and advisory work forever. I have a compulsion to write things down, so I have a really extensive database of really high caliber artists that I think should be working more. And so I decided that Prime Mover Theater Company needed to be born to give those young actors who didn't know that someone was working on their behalf, to make it public, sort of come out to the whole community. I'm doing this for you. I am, I was talking with Jeremy Webb, who's the artistic director of Neptune Theater in Halifax, and we joked, we said, he's like, you should write a list of all the people you've gotten work for. And I was like, yeah, about 3/4 of that list would have no idea that I booked work for them, but I am constantly working behind the scenes, in part because people reach out to me, and I really am grateful for that, but also because I have this need to help people, right? So so that kind of was the birth of Prime Mover Theater Company. And so not only do we have an artist database that we run, but we also work at artist development and training. And artist development training, we also have a new works development arm, and we broker co-productions. So in my ideal universe, I would meet an artist, work with them on their piece, whether it's a dance piece, a play, a musical, or a musical composition, work on that piece until it's really ready to appear on the largest stages in Canada. And then once the piece is polished and finished, take it and shop it around to producers and artistic directors across the country, and hopefully arrange a co-production between those companies. So that's kind of what the Prime Mover Theater Company does. Yeah.
Very nice. And that keeps you hopping, I'm sure.
It keeps me very busy. Yeah.
Now, is there, so the Prime Mover Theater Company, does it have its own website, or how do people reach you, or do you reach out to them? How does that work?
Well, it's a combination of both. If there are artists who are interested in being on the database, I should say it's also, the company is dedicated to advancing marginalized voices in theater. So that for me, that means all kinds of things though. That means artists of color. That means women of any color who are directors or choreographers or designers. That means our trans brothers and sisters. That means, non-conventional body types, we could say, not everybody needs to be a stick figure to be in my chorus. I like all bodies are beautiful. That could be, what else could that be? Like there's a whole host of, basically, if you're an artist and you feel like you don't see yourself represented on stage, then the Prime Mover Theater Company wants to help propulse you into those arenas.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. So we do have a website. The website is primemovertheater.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, so if artists wish to join the database or to apply, because I should say also, to be very clear, being on the artist database is equal to me personally vouching for you. So it's not sort of an open platform that anybody can just sign up for. By submitting the form on the website, you're applying to be included in the database. And then if I look at your materials and I'm like, oh yeah, this person should be on there, then we'll set up a profile for you and start advocating for you.
That's incredible.
Anybody can, yeah, anyone is what. There's also a portal to submit projects. So if you're working on a piece or a play or a dance or an orchestral score, you are welcome to submit your project through our submissions portal, and saying we'll look at it and see if it's a piece that fits for our mandate, which again is to put marginalized artists and their work on the largest stages in our flagship theaters. So, you know, it needs to be a work that of a certain scale. Then I would love to consider it, and I would love to work with you at honing it and refining it. You know, it's not, again, it's not so much about me doing the work as about me helping you connect with the best team to help your work really thrive, right? So if that's getting you in contact with a mentor choreographer or a dramaturge or whatever it is that you and your piece need, then I'm going to create that environment where you can really polish your work so it's ready for
I love it.
A grand stage.
PrimeMoverTheaterCompany.com. That's incredible. I wish you all the best with this. Absolutely. And you have had an incredible life. We've talked about it before. Maybe you should start writing your memoirs.
I mean, but you're very fortunate.
But you have had, but you've obviously worked very hard, and you've also believed in yourself. And I do believe dance, specifically ballet, is just a huge starting point for dancers to become present, to learn about themselves, about their bodies, and then of course working with members of your class and building that team camaraderie. So much about dance that really does transfer into, you know, whatever career you decide to do as a young person. It really does help, and I hear that through your journey as well. But what an incredible story. I think you need to start writing a book, my friend. I will read it for sure. I'm sure it'll be popular. #1 bestseller. I don't know what we call it, but I'll think of something. I'm sorry that you're frozen, but I get to hear your happy voice. And so just to finish up, if you don't mind, I always like to ask our guest artists. So a dancer, performer, aspiring singer, actor, a young person, what kind of advice would you give them today, especially in this day and age where, this time where a lot of them are not in their studios training, they're at home, they're doing Zoom classes. That's tough just in itself. So maybe some words of encouragement, what could you say?
Absolutely. I would say, 1, keep up your training. You want to be ready. This will pass. I know in this moment it feels like it's never ending, but it will pass. There will be a time where we're together again. There will be a time where you're with your people, you're in your studio again. And at that moment, you want to be ready. So keep training. That's #1. Keep training, vital. #2, if you're interested in pursuing this professionally, if you want to move on and have this be your career, this is so tough, but never mind what is happening beside you. Focus on being uniquely you. Don't try to be like the person beside you. Try to be the best you that you can be. The more you can find out what is special about the way you move, what is special about the way you sing, what is special about the way you create and interpret, the thing that is you and is unlike anyone else in the world, that is the thing that makes every artist we love shine.
It's true.
There is only one Nicki Minaj.
Yeah.
There is only one Beyonce. There's only one Ben Vereen, right? There's only one Justin Bieber even. Many, many imitators. And the mimics and the imitators never achieve success. I mean, they might go on to some sort of a career, that's fine, no problem. But it's the people who have spent the time, put in the hours training, have spent the time, they put in the hours practicing, they spend the time, they put in the hours exploring. Who am I? What am I trying to say? what is so special about me? Those are the people that have explosive careers. Those are the people that we look to and say, wow, I wish I could be like him or her.
Mm-hmm.
So find your unique voice.
Love that. Love that. That's a great advice. Thank you so much for that. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time today. I know you're super busy. You've got a lot going on, and you've got to get your kids in their classes, online classes.
Me too.
You do. But again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. This has been an incredible interview. You've inspired me, my friend, and I needed that today. So thank you. You don't even know that.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Oh my
I'm really very grateful as well. It's been a great time chatting with you and getting to know you and sharing a little bit of my history. So thank you for asking.
Oh my gosh, it's I'm so humbled to have you. Thank you. Like I said at the top of the interview, I was really nervous about this interview, but you made me feel very comfortable. So thank you. This is Ray Hogg, everyone, and like he mentioned, Prime Mover Theater Company. Do visit that website and submit online, and Ray will take it from there. Well, thank you, my friend. You have an amazing day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, thank you again. All the best. Okay, bye. Bye.